How is Caitlin after Wednesday, and do you have any update on her condition?
Yeah, she's okay. She's gonna be out on Saturday. But she's doing all right.
Do you have any indication right now of how long she will be out?
No indication. Obviously it's a good time because we have all week next week, so we'll take this opportunity just to get her treatment, get her healthy, get her back on.
We're using this time to get her treated, get her healthy, and back on the court. Now stop right there. Literally pause this video. Look at Stephanie White's body language in that press conference. See that pause before she even answers? That silence says more than words ever could.
And I watch them consistently. And I watch the WNBA consistently. I think it's a good product. And what I saw last night with these two teams tangling in back-to-back games, because it got heated 3 days ago when I watched it, was absolutely unacceptable, egregious. Stephanie White used the word. And just unfortunate that, you know, a situation, two situations could go untethered, if you will.
Pay attention to those words, long-term health and wellness. That's not a coach talking about a simple back injury. Someone is clearly trying to hold things together while everything falls apart behind closed doors.
What was the result?
How did we get here?
I could tell you how we got here. We got here through hate, envy, jealousy, hostility, nastiness from the players, immaturity from the players. That is how we got here. And we got here with the commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, who should have been fired, who has no clue what she's doing and how to handle. She was unprepared for Caitlin Clark's stardom coming into this league. That is how you got here.
I don't know how to answer this. All I can tell you is there's a lot of good players in the WNBA. For instance, if you're not watching Olivia Miles in Minnesota right now, you're missing something special. She's extraordinary. And
nobody in mainstream media wants to say this out loud. But Caitlin Clark suddenly sitting out Saturday's big game against the LA Sparks? A sore back might just be the excuse, not the reason.
Stephanie White addressed Caitlin Clark being out for Saturday's game. We're going to get into that. And many people feel like the writing is on the wall. Okay, now do I think Caitlin Clark has a back injury? Yes. Do I think the back injury solely is why she did not return last game? No. I think that if Stephanie White didn't sub her out after that turnover in which she didn't get back on defense and she gave up a layup, I think Caitlin Clark would have continued to play out the game. But did she have a back injury? Yeah, I believe she has a back injury. I just don't believe that is the reason why she was out.
Think about the timing. Just 3 days after Alyssa Thomas threw that nasty throat punch that refs somehow completely missed. And now suddenly there's an injury report? Something here doesn't add up.
You know, it's the same thing. Long-term health and wellness is the most important thing.
Long-term health and wellness, the same old Stephanie White go-to. I mean, I think Caitlin Clark wants out. At this point, I think she was having a really good game, and then after a turnover, Stephanie White benched her. I think Caitlin Clark.
Now pay close attention. Stephanie White straight up said on camera that officials need to do better. She's publicly calling out the inconsistency and questioning how star players are being protected. But here's the part everyone is completely sleeping on right now.
I played against Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops. Like, Caitlin does things. She's really hard to guard, Dan, and she's really hard to officiate. For instance, the closeout, the illegal closeout, where the player didn't have the landing space appropriate, that should have been upgraded to a flagrant 1. It was unnecessary contact, but
they didn't even check the landing zone. They checked to see if Caitlin hit her in the face. I mean, officiating in the WNBA is just a joke. It's just a joke.
She did step into the landing space. When a player shoots it from the logo with a gather step, like Caitlin does, there's not a lot of players that do that. Now, I mean, Kelsey Mitchell, her teammate, does it extraordinarily well. There's a few players that do it well. She's mastered it.
Kelsey Mitchell don't shoot from the logo. Sorry. No, I don't look. Enough with the Kelsey stuff. She don't pull up from the logo.
So it's hard to defend her, which is the result. You get these flagrant 1 type calls, which wasn't called. So And that was after.
Nobody in the mainstream media wants to touch this. Nobody wants to say it out loud. But let's just be real for a second. Caitlin Clark sitting out Saturday's massive game against the LA Sparks with a sudden back injury. This might have absolutely nothing to do with her back. Think about the timing here. 3 days. Just 3 days after Alyssa Thomas delivered that brutal forearm straight to Caitlin's throat on a drive. A foul so obvious that even casual fans watching at home reacted. And now suddenly there's a mysterious injury report. Something is seriously off. And then Stephanie White goes on camera and openly admits that the officiating needs to be significantly better. She's standing there publicly calling out the lack of protection for star players. But here's the part that everyone keeps skating right past, and it's the part that matters most. This is not about one bad call in one basketball game. Not even close. We're talking about a pattern. A very clear, very deliberate pattern that started the moment Caitlin Clark walked into this league back in April of 2024. The dangerous illegal closeout against Connecticut where referees never even looked at her landing zone. Flagrant fouls that somehow get quietly downgraded to common fouls after review. Play after play of excessive physical contact that gets labeled playoff basketball when it happens to Clark, but the second anyone breathes near another player on that floor, the whistle blows immediately. Stacey Dales actually said something important during a recent interview. She pointed out that Caitlin is genuinely difficult to officiate because of her unique play style, specifically that logo range shooting with the signature gather step. Okay, fair point. But that is absolutely not an excuse for professional referees missing blatantly dangerous plays in real time. That's actually the core of the entire problem. These refs are so locked in on watching Caitlin's feet for a potential travel call that they are completely missing defenders undercutting her on those very same landing zones. They're missing forearms thrown directly at her throat. They're missing the exact type of contact that would earn an instant flagrant foul if it happened to any other established star in this league. And Stacey basically confirmed it. Alyssa Thomas gets away with things on a basketball court that no other player in this association gets away with. Stacey was being as diplomatic as possible when she said it, calling Thomas an incredibly skilled player right before she dropped that truth on national television. But let's be crystal clear about what actually happened in that Connecticut game. What Alyssa Thomas threw was not a basketball play. That was a closed fist driven directly into Caitlin Clark's throat while she was attacking the basket. In real time, it looked horrific. In slow motion, it looked even worse. And the refs, standing right there on the floor, called it a common foul. The league eventually stepped in after the fact and upgraded it to a flagrant one, handing Thomas a one-game suspension. But here's the question that nobody sitting comfortably in the WNBA offices wants to answer. Why does it take social media going absolutely insane for a flagrant foul to actually get called correctly? Why are fans on Twitter doing the referee's job for them? Stacey acknowledged that slow-motion replays can sometimes make plays look more dramatic than they were. But she also said clearly that she was sitting there watching it live, and she knew instantly it was a flagrant foul. So what exactly is the referee's excuse right now? Now here's where the story gets genuinely complicated. Going into that Connecticut game, Caitlin was playing solid basketball. Not a legendary night, but solid, effective, winning basketball. Then she committed a turnover. Didn't sprint back on defense fast enough. Connecticut scored an easy layup. Stephanie White pulled her from the game immediately. And then, according to an injury report that surfaced later, we were told Caitlin had a back injury and couldn't return. But here's the thing smart fans are picking up on. If her back was genuinely that bad, why was she running the floor completely fine just seconds before that turnover? No grimacing, no grabbing at her back, no visible discomfort at all, until the exact moment after she got benched for a defensive mistake. The timeline just doesn't add up. Unless you seriously consider the possibility that Caitlin had a minor nagging back issue that Stephanie White then used as public cover to keep her on the bench after pulling her purely for performance reasons. And honestly, if that's what happened, if a head coach deliberately sat her absolute franchise-changing superstar over one defensive lapse while using an injury as the justification, that tells you everything you need to know about how broken things are inside the Indiana Fever right now. Just think about the context. Caitlin Clark is averaging over 35 minutes per game this season. She has played through elbows, forearms to the ribs, hip checks, and illegal screens without missing a single minute. She has gritted through contact that would have sidelined most players in this league weeks ago. But one turnover and one defensive breakdown later, suddenly her back is too hurt to finish a game. It doesn't pass the smell test. Go back and really listen to how Stephanie White responded when asked directly about Caitlin's injury timeline. She says, "There's no indication," and then immediately pivots to talking about how they're lucky to have the full week for treatment because there are no other games scheduled. That is not how a coach talks about a routine physical injury. That is how someone talks about a messy internal situation they're still figuring out how to spin for the media. And she goes right back to that same line she always leans on. Long-term health and wellness is the most important thing. Sound familiar? Because we heard that exact phrase all of last season when Christy Sides was micromanaging Caitlin's minutes. We heard it during the Olympic break. We hear it every single time there's any uncomfortable question about Caitlin's availability. At this point, it's just the Fever's default corporate deflection, and it means absolutely nothing to anyone who actually watches these games. Here's what we know for certain. Caitlin Clark is out for Saturday's game against the LA Sparks. The Fever are fighting for playoff positioning where every game counts. And their best player, the generational talent who has single-handedly brought this franchise back to relevance, broken records, and sold out arenas across the country, is sitting out with a back injury that nobody saw coming, nobody can explain clearly, and the head coach refuses to give any real timeline on. And in the middle of all this, there's wild speculation spreading across the basketball world that we may have already seen the last game Caitlin Clark ever plays in an Indiana Fever uniform. Now here's what Stacey Dale said next that deserves way more attention than it got. The league's new flagrant foul rules are specifically designed to protect players from head and neck contact. Under these rules, if you accidentally graze someone in the face on a routine layup, it's an automatic flagrant one. The league made a huge deal of implementing these rules specifically to stop dangerous plays. So how does Alyssa Thomas intentionally throwing a forearm into Caitlin Clark's throat only result in a one-game suspension after the fact? Stacey said Thomas should have gotten a minimum of 5 games. She's right. In the NBA, Draymond Green has been suspended for less. But in the WNBA, it's becoming painfully clear that Caitlin Clark operates under a completely different set of rules than everyone else. And before anyone says that's an exaggeration, go watch the Raw game film. Count how many times she gets grabbed off the ball without a whistle. Count how many illegal moving screens get set on her while the refs look away. Count how many times she gets undercut on three-point attempts without officials even glancing at her landing zone. Then compare that to how tightly they call the game when she's on defense. The gap is staggering, and it's obvious to anyone watching with honest eyes. So what is actually happening inside Indiana right now? Because this isn't about one missed game or one bad call. This is about a franchise that was completely unprepared to handle having the biggest star in women's basketball history land on their roster. Think about the organizational failures this season alone. They hired a coach who from day one was talking about how Caitlin needed to adjust her game instead of building around her talent. They let veterans publicly question her role in media interviews without any consequences. They failed to protect her from the targeted physical abuse she's faced every single night. Then they fired that coach and somehow replaced her with Stephanie White, who has somehow managed to handle this situation even worse. White came in talking about accountability and defensive intensity. What that has meant in practice is that the player who sells out every arena the Fever visit, the player who has generated more revenue for this franchise in 1 year than they made in the previous 5 combined, gets embarrassingly benched for not sprinting back on defense after 1 turnover. And we're supposed to believe this back injury is serious enough to keep her out of the biggest game of the week, but not serious enough for the head coach to give a single clear medical detail or timeline. Here's my honest read. Caitlin's back has probably been bothering her for weeks. That part is real. But if Stephanie White hadn't pulled her purely to make a disciplinary point, Caitlin would have kept playing through it. She would have gritted her teeth like she always does and finished the game. Today she'd be listed as probable, not out. The injury is real, but the timing is convenient. For White, for the front office, and maybe even for Caitlin herself, who might finally have a legitimate reason to step back and seriously think about whether she wants to spend the prime years of her career with an organization this dysfunctional. Because here's the thing everyone in basketball is thinking, but almost nobody is saying out loud. The relationship between Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever is broken. Maybe not beyond repair. Maybe a new GM and a complete coaching overhaul could start to fix it. But right now, today, it is hard to picture Caitlin looking at this organization and genuinely believing this is where she belongs long-term. She's locked into a rookie contract, yes. But superstars who want out find ways to make that clear. And if Caitlin Clark eventually forces her way out of Indiana, the blame lands entirely on an organization that was handed a once-in-a-generation talent and responded with dysfunction, mismanagement, and incompetence at every level. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything. Is this just a rest week before she comes back and finishes the season? Or is this the quiet beginning of the end of Caitlin Clark's time in Indiana? If it is the end, the Fever ownership has nobody to blame but themselves. You don't get handed an opportunity like Caitlin Clark twice. You just don't. So tell me, do you think Caitlin is coming back to finish this season? Or is this organization already in her rearview mirror? Drop your take in the comments right now. And if this kind of real, unfiltered breakdown is what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story is absolutely nowhere near over. The biggest chapter might not even be written yet.